Why do we watch films? What is it about them that is so intriguing that we are willing to spend money to go to our local cinemas and watch it instead of waiting for a few months until it comes back to our television screens? My name is Martin and I will be discussing the blockbuster movie Deadpool and its atypical approach to a superhero movie. Now, the purpose of movies is to create an entertaining film, for example the genre of comedy, whereas some movies are aimed to inform like documentaries, or some are made purely to sell merchandise and create a whole synergy with an overall goal of making money. This can be seen in genres like action and documentary. Now, in terms of the Deadpool movie, it can be used for escapism and give you 2 hours of freedom and entertainment. However, with an investment of 58 million, it shows that they wanted the movie to succeed and gain a large profit, which is what they achieved with a total box office of 783 million. The character of Deadpool is entertaining because he is not a typical protagonist featured in many mainstream superhero films, as throughout the films he committed many crimes. This is refreshing to the audience. Now, films are typically categorized in genres. What determines the genre of a film is the tropes that the film follows. An example would be that a typical superhero structure, the protagonist usually gets sent on a quest to save something or someone. A hybrid of genres can be seen in the film Deadpool, so some of the main genres are shown: action, comedy, superhero, and fantasy. The film has an overarching theme of action. This is because it features a 12 to 15 certificate, maximizing youth audiences, often hybridized with sci-fi, adventure, and romance. This is because it features conventions of all three genres. Per example, a theme of romance is throughout the film. Sci-fi is shown briefly near the end of the movie due to the setting of the final battle, and also throughout the film as the main protagonist becomes a mutant creature who cannot die. The theme of adventure is not present in this film, however the other themes are presented very strongly. A major Hollywood studio produced and distributed, which in this case was 20th Century Fox. High production values included CGI effects, which means fast-paced editing, classic Hollywood three-act narrative structure, predictable chain of events, cause and effect, a single-stranded linear closed narrative, dramatic non-diegetic sound, and more narrative action codes than Enigma codes. When comparing Deadpool to its competitors, like the Spider-Man franchise, which are aimed at the younger generation, it is clear that there are some stark differences in both tone and themes. For example, Deadpool features a much darker theme with stronger language. More violence, and torture scenes.
Oh, there's the money shot, baby. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
This all resulting in the age rating being 15 compared to its competitors. Prob's character theory can be shown within the movie. Now this theory was based around and included different characters. For example, a hero, villain, princess / prize, a donor, dispatcher, prize protector, helper. Now, in the Deadpool movie, the protagonist is Deadpool, an antagonist is Ajax, a heroine is Vanessa, a donor is the bartender, the helper is Weasel, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and Colossus. The mentor is Blind Owl. Todorov, a Russian theorist, also has a theory. He believed that all films followed the same narrative pattern. These steps began with an equilibrium and ended with the equilibrium, returning to a balance restored, also known as a happy end. The stages went as follows: an equilibrium, a disruption, a resolution, a restored order, and a new equilibrium. A state of equilibrium happens at the start of the movie. Deadpool meets a girl and falls in love. A disruption happens midway through the event, caused by him finding out he has cancer and doesn't have long left with his girlfriend. Now a recognition occurs when Deadpool agrees to undergo a medical experiment to remove the cancer cells. However, he is tortured, disfigured, and transformed into the final mutant version of Deadpool. an attempt to repair the damage or disorder. Deadpool uses his new skills to hunt down the man who nearly destroyed his life. Now, a return or restoration of a new equilibrium happens when Deadpool doesn't get his old life back, and he kills the evil scientist, and finally meets his old girlfriend after years of avoiding her due to him being ashamed of how he looked, after being disfigured, tortured, and transformed into the mutant he is. There is one more theory that exists, and it is created by a man called Levi Strauss. His suggestion is that all movies are driven by a binary opposition, and the conflicts arise from these. Binary opposites are the ideas of two things opposing each other in plots of films. For example, man versus machine, good versus evil, male versus female, humanity versus technology, dark versus light, and many, many others. His theory said that these binary oppositions offered powerful levels of meaning within the text. In Deadpool, an example of binary opposition is good versus evil, characterized by the conflict between Deadpool and Francis, the evil scientist. Near the opening of Deadpool, a scene occurs on the highway, where a fight occurs between the main protagonist and the villain's helpers and himself. This scene is action-packed, starting off with Deadpool behind a car and his head out. We immediately notice the rule of three. This is where a screen is split into 9 equal squares and the protagonist is placed to the left or the right of the screen, instead of the middle. In this scene it is used to create more tension as we are able to witness Deadpool slightly to the left and the villain to the right. The fact that he shot immediately when Deadpool showed his head and didn't stop shooting after he went to hide again shows the tension that was built up between the two. Here we can further see the tension and confusion. This is because the two villains look at each other, however they do not say anything. It makes the viewer feel similar emotions if they do not know what will occur next. The use of slow motion in this clip gives a sense that action is anticipated, and the director felt the need to slow it down, as otherwise the viewer would not be able to keep up with what is happening. The fact that Deadpool takes up the whole screen shows the superiority and authority. This foreshadows what will happen later of him winning the fight between the multiple villains he is fighting. This is shown because it gives the viewer a sense of realism, that even so superior and someone so strong can still get injured and shot and feel the pain as a normal human being. This makes the viewer feel uneasy and nervous, and also excited, and he cannot wait for the next cutscene to happen, because he does not know what will occur next. As we can see, a repeated use of rule of three. However, instead of this time portraying tension and confusion, it shows the confidence Deadpool possesses and the fear the villain feels because he is about to die. The use of non-diegetic soundtrack being played throughout the scene increases the excitement and energy that is in this part, as well as most present played a lot louder when Deadpool possesses most control. As you witnessed slightly before the car exploded, the use of slow motion again is used to emphasize how intense and action-packed the scene really is. Now, a different soundtrack was played to give the image of the end of Deadpool, and to make this as intense as possible. It makes the viewer feel uneasy because the protagonist should not die this early on in the movie.
Gotcha.
As the final bullet was used, Deadpool proceeds to break the fourth wall. Now what the fourth wall is, it's a performance convention in which an invisible imagined wall separates actors from the audience. While the audience can see through this wall, the convention assumes the actors cannot. This is achieved by the extreme close-up of Deadpool's face and him facing the camera and saying a comedic sentence of
I'm touching myself tonight.
When producing a film, there are set production stages that every movie follows. The stages are pre-production, production, and finally a post-production stage. The pre-production stage includes everything that is produced before shooting begins. This includes choosing a director, scouting locations, set designing, and casting. In the production stage, the production stage consists of generally recording and producing the movie. The cinematographer usually consists of more than one person that are responsible for filming the scene. The sound designer and Foley artist work in both post-production and production, as they are needed for both stages. The makeup artist needs to constantly do makeup on the cast. Finally, in the post-production stage, the main job is editing it together and making it look visually pleasing for the audience. Things like visual effects are added as well as soundtracks and Foley artist effects.
There was a highly skilled team involved in the production processes of it, starting with the director of the film was Tim Miller. The producers of the film were Lauren Schlar-Donner, Simon Kinberg, and Ryan Reynolds. As well as starring as the main protagonist in the film, he also was the director, which allowed the overall production to be in the way Ryan wanted it to be, and without him the movie would not have succeeded as well as it did. Now, pre-production roles. The writers were assigned to be Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. The assigned location scout was Ron Uribe. The job of set design and props was assigned to Shannon Gottlieb and Shane Viel. The task of actually casting the movie was assigned to Ronna Kress. Production roles. The head of cinematography was Ken Sang. The sound designer was Warren Hendricks. Now the head of makeup was assigned to Monica Huppert. The head of hairstyling was Anne Carroll. Deadpool's costumes were designed by Angus Starthy. In the post-production stage, soundtrack designer was known as Junkie XL, also known as Antonius Tom Holkenberg. The Foley artist and sound designer at post-production was Dan O'Connell and John T. Tucci, and the main editor was Julian Clark and Matthew G. Carson. Now, the head of visual effects was Leo Patrick Hood, and finally, the marketing and promotion distribution was 20th Century Fox.